Welcome to the Bosch exhibition. This is the first room of the exhibition, and the purpose of the room is to introduce you to the man and the product. The man is Robert Bosch, and the product is the magneto. So on the right, the very first magneto, the 1000th magneto, number 10,000 and a million. And there was only 15 years between number 1 and a million. So it was a transformative product, and it helped to launch the car industry, because before the magneto, and this was a question I asked when I first worked on this project, I said, how do you start an internal combustion engine? And I said, oh, before the magneto, it was a naked flame. So this was an obvious improvement. On my right, you've got here the first factory of Robert Bosch, and a replica of the sort of lathe and tools that they would have been using in the early days of Bosch. And if we now look at the wall over here, this is dedicated, and is really the reason that we're here, because this celebrates Bosch being in the UK 125 years. And the reason he came to the UK was he saw it as the best step for him to make his company global. You'll see some early photographs of early premises in London, and in the background you can see the London Eye and Tower Bridge. And the reason that I put those in is that they're both powered by Bosch components. So that gives you an idea, these two iconic structures, of just how embedded Bosch are in the UK. So if we now move to the other section of the room, where we have a wall dedicated to the man and the company. So this introduces his parents, his siblings, pictures of him as a young man. He married twice, his 2 wives. And the other point that I'd like to make is the map up above. Because I saw that when I started on this project in Stuttgart, and it was astonishing to me to see how far around the world he was at such an early time. So he was in Sydney and Christchurch, 1907, Buenos Aires, for example, 1908, Japan, 1911, or before the First World War, when the only means of getting there was by sea. Another thing of interest in this room is how the logo of Bosch was inspired. So here you can see the modern logo, and here's a cutaway of a magneto, and you can see the shape which inspired the modern logo. And here is a drawing which is in the archive, the original is in the archive in Stuttgart. And Robert Bosch asked one of his engineers to come up with an idea for the logo. And you can see he had 4 attempts, and the top right-hand corner is the one that has survived to this day. So this is a small gallery showing early posters from a very interesting time in Bosch history, where they commissioned artists to explain the products and promote the products that Bosch were doing at that time. And there's one poster which I do want to point out to you, which is this one. And the reason I thought this is so clever is because Bosch do not manufacture motorcycles. So what the artist has done is he's used a purple that recedes against the black. But they do manufacture components. So the components are picked out in red, including what we've just been looking at, the magneto. And this poster was an inspiration for something that you're going to see in the next gallery, which is a modern equivalent, an X-ray of a car as a hologram. So this is the main body of the exhibition. It's known as the Pavilion Gallery, and it is a contemporary gallery. The 2 galleries we've just been in were period rooms in one of the 5 substantial London townhouses that form the Cromwell Place Arts Hub. This gallery was in what would have been the gardens of the houses, and because it is such a modern interior, I concentrated here on the more up-to-date products, but with some historical context as well. So the main part of this room is the 4 divisions of Bosch that make up the company that we know today. So that is mobility solutions, consumer goods, industrial technology, energy and building technology. And for each of those sections, we have designed a cluster that relates to that particular division. But before we show you those, I'd like to point out to you the timeline behind me. And I designed this to work on different levels. So the top strip, starting on the left, is milestone products. So you can see the magnetos, which we've already been looking at, and you can see how that was the only product that was being made. And then gradually they diversified, more products came in, bringing it right up to the present day. The strip under that is all about company history, and the one under that is about Robert Bosch, his family, and his personal history. And then right at the bottom, text only, we've put some national and international events. So you can approach the timeline in one of 2 ways. Either you can just run it left to right to get a sense of the progression and the history, or you can stand in one spot and you can look at the top, what were they making in a certain date, what was happening in the company, what was happening in Robert Bosch's life, and in the wider world, what was happening. And this has actually proved to be an extremely popular aspect of the exhibition. Within the Pavilion Gallery, we've got a couple of central highlights. One of my favorites is the Norton 1907 motorcycle, which I will show you here. So this very motorcycle won the very first round the island race, Isle of Man race, in 1907. And if you come in close, you'll be able to see the Bosch magneto on the motorcycle. And the other point to note is that the drive, if we go around the other side, that the drive belt here is made of leather, which is why they had to have a spare one because they broke so frequently. And then the other centerpiece is one of the very first domestic fridges dated 1933. And apart from that, we've got on the end wall a huge hologram. So there are 4 different sequences. Here, for example, we've got the E1 racing car. And this is a hologram, again, very popular with the visitors this week. And there are, as well as that, we've got Tower Bridge, we've got London Eye, we've got a hammer drill, and we've got an internal combustion engine. And we've also got other holograms, which you can see at high level above the timeline. So I think now we'll go and look at each cluster in turn. So the idea with the cluster was not to overload visitors with information. We just chose a brief introduction text, 1 or 2 images, some 3D objects, and then in each cluster you've got a touch screen, and that has 5 or 6 different topics that people can watch a short video so they get a little bit more information. But what we've got here is, as you can see, a working model of a wind turbine, some images of it showing the Bosch components within the turbine. One of my favorites is the Tower Bridge, which lifts and closes using Bosch components. So moving on to the next cluster, which is consumer goods. We've got everything from the robot lawnmower to the hammer drill, the present hammer drill, and in the showcase, the 1939 equivalent of this one. I think there's one product I'd like to point out here, which is this Forfix hair trimmer, which was the very first power tool that Bosch developed. It was 1928, and the year or 2 before that, there'd been a slump in the car market. And Bosch, ever the resourceful businessman, thought, how am I going to keep my factories going? Let's do power tools. And that was the very first example of a power tool with an early drill here. And if you look up the top, which is a modern picture of all the power tools that they do today. You can see what an inspired decision it was. So moving on down here, we get energy and buildings technology. So that's about heat pumps, security cameras, and boilers. So the way we present this is to contrast the very latest, or even the future, with the old. So here we have a 1932 Junkers boiler right next door to what Bosch are looking for the future, which is the hydrogen boiler. There's also the solid oxide fuel cell here, which I must confess I don't understand terribly well, but luckily lots of people in Bosch do, and this is a very exciting development for the company. Moving down to the last cluster, which is mobility solutions, and the various sections of this, we've got Bosch's involvement with motorsport, both historic and also at the top there, the present day. And then we've got car components, and we've got examples in the showcase of very early, the very first diesel injection pump from 1931, car horn from 1921, and with images we've got a sort of car radio from the early 50s contrasted with the very latest information and entertainment center in vehicles. This is a fun aspect of the exhibition. So this is something that visitors are able to do a demonstration, to drive a car with and without ABS, and to see if they are able to miss the obstacles. Very popular in the exhibition. And then finally, there's a section about the automotive aftermarket, again with historical images and objects contrasted with the very latest. So this is the final section of the exhibition, and it's a very exciting one. It's an immersive experience. And I chose this method of showing the future as being a sort of total enveloping experience, where we're projecting onto 3 walls at the same time. And you will see behind me icons, what they call Tron lines, the Internet of Things, the future of the home, future of mobility, and the future of energy. And it's on a loop for about 5 minutes, so people can come in at any point and watch and just get a sense. We're not trying to give all the information, but a lot of the people who've come to see this, they say to me afterwards, I had no idea that Bosch did this or that. And so it's been a really good way of putting across a company which is as large and diverse as Bosch.